and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you. I'll call upon myself to ask some questions. We'll start out with Mr. Goldberg. In your opinion, what would a post-JCPOA deal look like, and what would you add or subtract from the original deal to prevent Iran from being able to obtain nuclear weapons?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for the question. The JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, was fundamentally flawed for several reasons. Number one, we ceded Iran an enrichment program. We had an international consensus that Iran should not have an enrichment program. It has no right under the Nuclear Nonproliferation Treaty to enrich. Every country has a right to peaceful nuclear energy. You don't have a right to enrich. In fact, John Kerry reiterated that while he was negotiating the agreement. And instead of insisting on that, what was enshrined in several UN Security Council resolutions that they halt all enrichment-related activities in addition to reprocessing activities, we decided to say, okay, you can keep all of these illicit nuclear sites that we've now learned are completely intrinsically tied to their nuclear weapons program, thanks to the nuclear archive that was discovered in 2018 by the Mossad, which we've now seen throughout the world, which has led, by the way, the International Atomic Energy Agency to new undeclared nuclear sites in Iran that Iran today refuses to acknowledge, refuses to explain, where the IAEA has even found traces of uranium. The idea that we would envision any sort of agreement with this regime that allows them to keep the capabilities to produce nuclear weapons in the future is fundamentally flawed. That's number one. Even if you believed that Iran would somehow hold to an agreement, would not at some point unshackle itself from having these capabilities and race to a nuclear threshold, the deal itself was baked to allow Iran legitimate pathways to nuclear weapons if they just followed the deal. That was what was so crazy about it. Iran would get $1 trillion over a decade, attract foreign direct investment, get legitimized despite still being the world's leading state sponsor of terrorism, building longer and longer range missiles, including intercontinental ballistic missiles, which they still aim to achieve according to our own Defense Department's reports on an annual basis. They're working on it today. They would continue to sponsor terrorism in the region, plot against the United States and others, still repress their people. And if they follow the deal, all the things that you just heard Ms. Slavin talk about that are happening, that the ranking member is very alarmed by, that we're all alarmed by, they're all allowed under the deal because there are sunset provisions, expiration dates that over a certain number of years, everything becomes legitimate, all the way to weapons-grade uranium production to any stockpile level. The only thing that they promised long-term in the deal, we promise here, the Supreme Leader, the people who murder Americans, the people who oppress their people, the people who are helping Putin right now destroy Ukraine, we promise we'll never build nuclear weapons. These sites are good sites. These aren't the droids you're looking for, as we would say in Star Wars. So we have to go right back to formula here, Mr. Chairman. The concept behind a maximum pressure campaign was to understand something that we've really learned both from the nuclear archive, which showed that they lied to negotiators throughout negotiations of the JCPOA and through the JCPOA, but also what has happened last fall with Mahsa Amini's murder and the uprising that has followed. By the way, Mr. Chairman, we track protests in Iran on a weekly basis at FDD. They're still going on throughout the country. They haven't stopped. We cannot approach this regime as one that you are going to negotiate as if you're in a Western bar trying to make a real estate deal. This is a brutal, radical theocracy that wants to destroy America and wipe Israel off the face of the earth. And so a combination of military deterrence, economic pressure, and maximum support for the Iranian people has to be the basis for a long-term sustainable policy solution.
Okay, Ms. Coates, what additional steps do you think should be taken by the U.S. and the international community to ensure Iran's cooperation with facility inspections?
I think just to underline a point that Mr. Goldberg just made, the revelation of the Iranian nuclear archive in 2018 was a critical revelation of the internal failures of the original JCPOA, which was not negotiated in good faith. Clearly, if the regime in Tehran had wanted a good faith gesture toward the Americans, handing over that archive would have been a way to increase confidence in the deal tenfold. So I think that the fact that they are not a believable, credible negotiating partner is the fundamental problem when you're dealing with a situation like their nuclear program. So, I would suggest that if one wanted to get to a comprehensive deal that would give the American people some confidence that we weren't just kicking the can down the road yet again with yet another rogue nuclear program, that we would insist on changes in their sponsorship of regional proxies. We would insist on restrictions on their missile programs, and concur completely that we would stand with the Iranian people against the regime that has oppressed them for so long.
Okay, we'll call on Mr. Garcia.